human beings have communicated their shared values for all of human history for like 30,000 years, right, is by narrative, spoken word. That's why Jesus spoke in parables, because that's the way it works, right? It's the way our brains consume ideas. So in the Enlightenment period, they're like, well, I mean, the Bible's making claims, or this book's making claims that aren't necessarily reality. So why even have it? It's like, okay, well, that's a smart person doing a dumb thing. I think it left us very susceptible in the 20th and 21st centuries to postmodernism, which is basically just repackaged Marxism without all the hot buzzwords. And we've gone from what the Enlightenment wanted us to do, which is deductive reasoning, into just inductive reasoning, where you draw general conclusions from specific examples, which is to say anecdotal or lived experience or whatever. And it's fucking stupid. It's nonsense, right?
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We have a special guest today, Joe Geffert. This is the first in a series of, I don't know what I'm going to call it, maybe the regular dick tour, although that kind of seems like it's a tour of actual penises. But these are going to be a series of interviews I do with people who are fans of the show and just have regular jobs, I guess, right? Which is something that we don't hear a lot from these days. So introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Sure. First of all, Dan, thank you for your service, and thank you for having me on the show. I work in the trades here in the Portland area. Don't want to go too far in depth, I guess, but I'll just say my job sucks. We do vacuum systems built in the home.
HVAC, huh?
I'm an HVAC guy. I was trained that way, classically trained, but this is actually built-in central vac, so it's 2-inch PVC pipe and retractable or standard hoses. So
cool. Okay, so let's go back to the beginnings here for you. What did you grow up in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, I'm a lifer. I've been here. I'll be 45 in July.
And you've lived in that area your whole life?
I've kind of lived all over in the Northwest. So real quick, both parents were in the military. My dad died when I was pretty young, but basically Seattle area. And then when I was 16, moved to Eastern Washington or Central Washington, which was like a whole culture shock. You know what I mean? And then went to school over on the coast for a couple years and played baseball there. It's fun. NWAC, which is just like JUCO. Transferred over to Wazoo over in Pullman, so damn near Idaho. And then graduated from there. My first wife and I moved down to Portland, Vancouver area after that. And we've been here ever since. And divorced, raised a son. I got remarried, and now we're raising a 3-year-old. So lots going on.
So how have you seen, I guess, the political landscape change there over the past, let's say, I mean, it's parts of those areas, Seattle and Portland specifically, and then, some of the college towns as well, Eugene and shit like that have been pretty crunchy, I guess you would call them back in the day, but now they're full retard. So how have you seen that develop?
I mean, it's pretty cut and dried over here, Dan. It's the western side of the state, for the most part, is your traditional liberal faction, or whatever you want to call them. It's from Northern California all the way up to Canadian border. It's been kind of hippies and their kids now. And then when you get on the other side of the mountains, essentially, I mean, you have farmers, orchards, just people that work for a living and own their own businesses and own farms and ranches, and foresters and things like that. So that's the divide, really.
Why do you think that is? Is it just the classic city versus rural nonsense where we have different value? I mean, that's kind of why the Electoral College was set up the way it was in the first place, right?
Right. So every piece of land would have its own representation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the case study from 45 years of being here is, like I said, it's pretty black and white. Once you get over those mountains, you come into like Bill Gates, nose in the air, Prius driving. It's like South Park, it's like It's bad. And then, it's basically just they just think they're better than the other side of the state, and without pulling any punches, that's just kind of what it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of other states are like that.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. So you went to what did you study in school? You went to JUCO first, then you finished at Wazoo. What did you study there?
Yeah. So, I was a '90s kid, right? I graduated in '98 from high school, and so super into sports. I played all three ball sports. I ain't about working out, and basically wanted to go into journalism. I wanted to be Dan Patrick or Keith Olbermann. We had Stu Scott back then, and that was it was the cool thing. And I thought I could talk my way into a job or whatever. So I went to school for that. First at the JUCO level, I got my associates in journalism, and I worked for the school paper in Aberdeen, Hoquiam, which is like, I think at one point it had the highest teen suicide rate in the nation. Kurt Cobain's from there and all that shit. So it's a really depressing old logging town that there's no more logs. So it just kind of sits there. And then from there, I transferred to Wazoo, and I was going to go right into, it's called the Edward R. Murrow School of Communication. So it's a big deal. It goes back and forth with Syracuse of being the top two communication schools, or it was there for a while. So I jumped in there. I had all my prereqs done. So I jumped right into the sports broadcasting program. And didn't know if I was too good on camera, but there was a lot of kids that were a lot more trained than I was. And most of them seemed to be just statistical nerds, I guess. I played sports. I'm not like ogre or anything like that. But I was smart enough to get in there and be in that crowd, but it just didn't work out for me. I actually I failed a communications law class twice. Even worked with the professor to try to see what I could do, but it was the proofs, the dissensions and the what do you call it, affirmation or whatever, just from and they were usually like 1A cases and stuff like that, just like burning your draft card on the steps. It's all the typical communications law type stuff that you do,
like protecting sources and all that shit twice. Too.
Yeah, and it basically dropped my GPA below the level to stay in that college of the university. So I had to, you go into the collection area, which is the sport management department, which is an education department. And they basically teach you how to run a tournament. And, it's like a pre-law if you want to go into a sports agent or work for an organization and things like that. But it was just a bunch of athletes and football players that needed extra credits. So I have a sport management bachelor's.
And did you ever work in that field at all, or did you go into the trades immediately after that?
So it's actually a funny, and I'll be quick with it, but so my first wife and I, it was kind of like a whirlwind thing. We both wanted certain things, but we really didn't know how to do it. So we just kind of struck off. And so what we did is we moved down to Portland to work for, at the time, it was called the Portland Beavers. It was AAA affiliate for the San Diego Padres. And then we both got internships. We didn't let them know that we were together. We just kind of did that. So we got a little taste of everything: promotions, ticket sales. God dang, ticket sales, man. That's a single man's game.
Oh yeah.
Minor league ticket sales. Wow.
Yeah. Just like all the crazy shit that you see at a minor league baseball game, that's all about getting people out to the crowd. So you're basically, ticket sales becomes not a sales position, but a marketing position almost, right?
100%. Yeah. You're selling group. You're selling theme nights is basically what you're doing.
What's the craziest one you guys came up with? Because there's like everybody looks to the Savannah Bananas now as the kind of the gold standard for all the ridiculous nonsense, but minor league baseball teams and hockey teams as well, like the ECHL, have been doing this shit for years.
Yeah, it's not as wild. I love the Bananas. We have the Pickles over here, which they play at Lens Park in Portland, which is, it's an interesting area. It's in Southeast Portland, not too far from our shop, but it's as long as it's during the day and sunny, it's a great place to be.
Yeah, that's the problem though. The weather up there sucks. Like Savannah, the weather's good most of the year.
Yeah, but it's a good crowd. There's actually some some guys that my son graduated with and played with that play for the Pickles now. So, no, it's fun. And then what was that? What were we talking about before that?
Just the ridiculous fucking marketing stuff that happens at these.
Oh yeah, minor league. The thing that I remember always, it was like a Sunday. Sunday they would have matinee games, right? And they had turf.
Yeah.
And so, you're talking about June, July, August, and so it's 80 degrees outside, but on the turf,
man, it's rough. It's rough.
So they had the wild idea of taking all the interns and some of the, younger promotional people or whatever, and dressing us up in all the different mascots. And we had a soccer game out on 105-degree field turf, and I was wearing the San Diego Padre outfit. And I'm not going to go into how many goals I scored or stopped that day, but it was just one of those things that was just I felt like I was going to die.
Yeah.
I played baseball in Central Washington in Zilla in black dugouts when it's 105 degrees. Can't even throw the ball 50 feet, let alone 60 to pitch it in there. So, yeah, it's ridiculous. But minor league experience was fun. And then after that, if you want me to go into after that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I played baseball in Puerto Rico for a couple months between my junior and senior year in high school. Played on some traveling all-star team down there. We played all the best teams in Puerto Rico, and then we played some DR teams as well. And
Nice.
A lot of the stadiums down there, I think it was part of Major League Baseball,
Outreach.
yeah, outreach to the those two areas, one country and one territory. And they built all these stadiums. And they look basically like a AA baseball stadium, right? But it's all turf, and there's no when you're inland even a little bit on that island, it's fucking hot and humid as shit. So there's not a lot of wind, but the humidity's still there, and you're on turf, and it's like 110, 120 on the surface. Yeah. And you can see, you look out into the outfield, you can see the heat lines coming up off the ground. I'm like, holy shit. Now I was 17, so it didn't matter there, but
right. You're well conditioned. But
today there's no fucking way. I would just leave.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've been to San Juan in July. At the end of July, it's not
toasty,
fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just ended up at Senior Frogs, and I don't remember a whole lot more.
You don't need to.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's kind of how that went, and then the next part's kind of interesting. I don't know, but so after that, we went out. They offered her a job in operations, and she didn't take it. So and she ended up working at a place called the Mountain View Ice Arena.
Mountain View, Mountain View, California? No,
Mountain View. It's in Vancouver. It's just over the river.
Okay.
So I've lived in Vancouver primarily the better part of now. I think it's about 21 years or so. But now we live in Damascus, Oregon, which only made it a 2-hour drive to come see you guys in Springfield. So basically after that, so we moved down to Portland, Vancouver. She got a job driving a Zamboni and being a facility manager at this ice arena. It was half ice arena and half church.
Okay.
It's weird. It was weird.
What's that? That's got to be let's see, Episcopalian or something like that. What kind of church was it?
I think it was just non-denominational, just like a regular. I don't even know what you would call it.
I'm trying to think of those snow people. Lutheran, maybe, all the Germans and people that came over.
There's a lot of speaking of that. There's actually a lot. We call them bunners. Sorry to any of my apostolic Lutheran friends out there, which there are many.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's pretty old fashioned. Long skirts, bonnets, things like that. Deacons and all that fun stuff. So, so after that, I got a job at Big Five Sporting Goods as a second assistant manager at the mall. We were engaged at that time, set to be married and all that stuff. So I worked the closing shift and she worked the breakfast shift. So we always had interchanging schedules. So did that and then I'll just kind of speed it up. So we ended up getting married. We got into it. We were young. We didn't really find out that we didn't like each other very much until we were a couple years into the marriage. And so we we had our son, and then we just decided at some point it really wasn't working. But we wanted to get divorced young enough where he would always know mommy and daddy's house.
Mm.
So we split everything down the middle. Financially, agreed to stay in the same town. She's from Puyallup, which is up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we did that for 18 years, 16, 17, 18 years. My son's now in college. He's a pilot.
A pilot of what? What does he fly?
He has not just like Xbox, right? So he flies single engine. Right now, I think the one he got his license on was the Cessna.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty dope, man. If I never do anything else in my life, my son can fly a goddamn airplane.
Yeah, that's not a bad endorsement, I guess. So I want to go back to the relationship part. You said something that you didn't find out. You didn't really like each other until a couple years in.
College is much different than real life, man.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm curious how that all went down. Like, what was it? What was it that attracted you two together in the first place? And then what was the indicator that was like, oh, we're just not on the same page here?
No, that's pretty easy. So I went to Wazoo, and I was in the Greek system. So when my buddies and I would walk up to class in the morning, you had to walk through like the courtyard, and then you come to like a brick building, and then there's a Starbucks right on the left-hand side. Just a window. You walk up, you order your coffee, go to class. Well, I'd been walking the same path for a couple of weeks, and I kept noticing this blonde in the window. And I swear to God, she kept looking over, and I would just miss it. And so, I'm 19, 20, or actually, I was like 21 at that time. I'm pretty full of myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go up there. I'm gonna ask her out because we had we had a handcuff to a fifth dance coming up at the main house, and basically what that is, if you don't know, you went to Penn State pre-med.
No, not pre-med. No, I went for grad school. I was my degree from Penn State is in international homeland security with a specialty in border security.
Okay.
Specifically,
we'll have an interesting conversation about that and talk about my mother. So,
okay.
But not right now. So,
why is she an illegal immigrant?
Yeah, right. She wishes. But no. So getting back to Brenda is my son's mom's name, and how we got together was that whole thing. So I asked her out essentially, and she said yes. So, we went to the party. Basically, what we did is, and how that works is that handcuffed to a fifth is pretty self-explanatory, self-evident. It's you tie yourself together, and you don't get to untie until that fifth is gone.
So it's like a group version of Edward 40 Hands, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But and we did. It's pretty hardcore. We did whipped cream vodka and cream soda. I don't know, because she's a girl, man. I was like, girls like vodka.
Yeah.
so anyway,
that sounds like the worst hangover ever.
It's not great, no, because it's the sweetness too.
Yeah.
Never drink Arbor Mist. That's actually the worst hangover ever.
I don't even know what that is.
It was like an older version of Boone's Farms, kind of the same.
Man.
Yeah, it was really bad. But that's all you can afford when you're like 22. But so anyway, we did that. We started dating pretty heavy and stuff, and we were basically going into our senior year at that time. And that was in the spring, and in the summer, we actually we both had to do summer school. I had broken my leg in half playing basketball, so I had to make up some credits, and then she was just, I think, taking summer school to get ahead. And so we basically spent the whole summer together. She lived in Pullman. I stayed back and lived there too. I was able to take her to my hometown, and how that whole thing. I think you guys mentioned that the other day in some way, shape, or form. But it's a big thing, when you're the town that I'm from, the Central Washington town's called Natchez. It's like fucking Mayberry. It's Mayberry. So I brought her back there. We did karaoke. I was a karaoke DJ for 15 years. If you want to hear about that, but probably not. So it was just a good time. So we fell in love. We did the whole thing. I proposed to her up on on Chinook Pass, which is just a beautiful mountain pass up there. And it was all roses. We got married. We went on our Caribbean cruise, the whole nine. It was great, And then we started to kind of get have issues kind of around the time that the baby came. I was pretty damn immature. I'm just going to throw myself on the sword there, and started finding excuses to get mad, and discovered my anger issues. So never was physically abusive, but I'm sure there was some mental in there. So we decided to just kind of go our separate ways and raise the kid to the best of our ability. And that's kind of, things happen. It's sometimes 22 is a big difference from 25.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was an idiot until probably, I think 29 is when I stopped being a complete idiot.
I'm going to go like 33, 34.
Yeah.
It's just, and I feel so dumb, but like, I feel like enlightened, if that makes any sense. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something about, I was talking to my buddy about this the other day with his journey, actually, that it was great watching him, I guess, evolve with, after he decided to get married and have kids and shit like that. Are you chirping over there?
That was an accident, but that's pretty funny.
Yeah. It's like the way that it changes the way you see the world in a lot of ways, right? Yeah. Like we all start out, especially people that are, I guess, inclined to pay attention to politics or culture or some particular industry or whatever it is, right? Even if you're just super into something, whether it's sports or you're in film production or anything like that, like you start off full of piss and vinegar and you want to tear down corrupt systems, right? That's your main goal as a youth. And you can become a contrarian like that for your whole life if you're not careful. But then, having responsibilities outside of yourself, I think it transitions you to a place where all you care about is protecting your family, and then by extension protecting your community, and then by extension protecting your country. So the follow-on to that is that, I guess you to some degree graduated to being a leader, right? You know what I mean? And I think that's people say, I don't know that we should have 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds out there just getting people pregnant for no reason, right? But I do think accepting some high-level responsibility at the earliest possible moment for a human being is something that builds a lot of character. And then, the follow-on to that is our age people, and how are we using all of this new leadership authority to use the younger and motivated folks to actually accomplish shit instead of just letting them spin their wheels. And you know what I mean? Even if we could, help them evolve more quickly into a nuanced and resilient mindset instead of just the dipshit that I was at 22. Now, 22, I expect them to be dipshits. But by 25, 26, if you're a man, it's time to start stepping up and being a man. And you got to avoid, like I said before, this not cynical, contrarian nihilism, black pill bullshit. Because right now, that's the loudest voice in the manosphere. The loudest voices are all people telling dudes not to respect women, not to give them any of their real emotion or attention and all that stuff. And that's just poison, man. I mean, it's going to fuck you up for life.
It doesn't help the situation,
I mean, you get out of things what you put into them. If you come to the table, and this is the self-defeating and self-fulfilling prophecy of that whole worldview, is that, as I say a lot, you can control in your life your attitude and your effort, right? And pretty much everything else is a coin flip. And if you show up to something that sucks and you have a bad attitude, it's going to suck worse. If you show up to something that's great and you have a bad attitude, it's going to suck instead of being great. But if you show up to something that even sucks and you have a good attitude, chances are you can shape it into something that's meaningful. You know what I mean? You can never do that if you're black pilled or whatever the fuck these idiots are calling themselves.
I would call it Malthusian thinking. It's like, you're just, if that's not going to work for me, then fuck everybody else. It's really sad, and it basically just means that you've sort of given up on things in a way. Like, you're still breathing air, but you're if you're not helping, you're hurting, sort of thing. So that's absolutely right. And then actually, that's probably a pretty good transition if you want to talk about like the first principles and things like that. Yeah,
I mean, you've watched the show for a little while now. I'd like to hear from that because we'll talk a little bit more about your career later. But tell me about the things. I guess if you had to pick a few that matter most to you, what are they?
So I'd say, like, I've lived a bunch of different lives, brother, and it's just kind of all piecemeal together. I haven't always had a good attitude, but I've always been optimistic, and that's what keeps me kind of coming back, because I have hopes and dreams and things I really do want to see accomplished, and I have great children and a good life, But the first principles, so I had to do a little bit of research, and then it started to click for me. But it's just deductive reasoning, and then starting from a premise of, I guess, like factual, you boil it down to its core, I guess, and then go from there. Can you explain it a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I can give a
synopsis or something.
Yeah, I can give a specific example actually that'll help the listener kind of understand.
Sure.
People say that the thing they care, like, so you've watched Street Gonzo. It's a ridiculous show, right? But one of the primary, he's a lunatic.
Gary's awesome.
One of the primary, I guess, themes of the show is asking people what they think about America, or what they love about America, or what America means to them, or something to that effect. And freedom is the word that comes up a lot, right? And when you ask them what freedom means, you're going to get disparate answers. Some people are like, the freedom to do whatever I want, to say whatever I want, to make money, blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
But if you drill down long enough and ask them specific questions, you'll always get, even if it's just in passing or on the periphery, you'll get some conversation about freedom of speech. And this is why it's important to understand first principles, because it's a platitude. You just say, I believe in freedom of speech, is a meaningless thing to say, right? So you have to understand why it matters. And we're talking about John Locke, John Stuart Mill, specifically, these two guys, Thomas Paine as well, I guess.
Huge Thomas Paine guy.
Yeah, it's like, why is it that speech is so important? And it's because the ultimate right that you have is the right to your property, right?
That's Locke.
Yeah, Locke would say that the ultimate iteration of that is yourself, your own person. So you can apply your own person's labor to the earth and extract value out of it, and then use that value to purchase other things. Right. But he goes on to say, and then John Stuart Mill echoes this, that your property right also is in the individual decisions that you choose to make, right? Mm-hmm. And that is all. The entire premise is built on the idea that this body, my mind, my soul, whatever you want to call it, is my property, and I can do with it as I wish. And that the ultimate version of that is to be able to think, right? I should be able to think anything I want to think and say anything I want to say, because that's what thinking is, right? That's what speech is, thought, right? And if somebody can control your speech, then they can control your thought. So you have to understand the underlying principle there to understand why it's not just wrong to censor people, it's evil, right? You're taking from them the thing that belongs to them the most, and you're trying to make them feel bad for the fact that you had to take it from them in the first place, right? It's completely fucked.
Yep. You just kind of summed up the entire political landscape of the last decade plus. So the platitude that I like the best is individual liberty. That means having autonomy of movement, association, religious speech. It's a live and let live sort of ideology, but at the same time, it does give voice to dissenters as well, right? I mean, that's the whole fucking point. So my thought on that real quick is kind of as a point, is that when I find out that somebody's stupid, I let them talk as much as they want. Because eventually, if somebody else hears that's reasonable, or has two functioning brain cells, will start to question it and eventually come to the conclusion that they're full of shit. So it's like, words matter, and letting a fool drown in their own word salad is probably one of the most satisfying things that I get to witness or be a part of, because it's maybe it might be a little dark, but I like when bad people get their just desserts, I guess.
Sure, yeah. I mean, but you could also think of it this way: cutting someone off before, or shutting them down or whatever before their idea is exposed as bankrupt and stupid is actually a disservice to your cause, right? Like you've not allowed them to play the game. It's like I don't know, you're playing football and a receiver's carrying the ball down the sideline and he's about to fall out of bounds and you grab him and hold him in bounds. Why would you do that? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. Knock his ass out. That's your job, is to knock his ass out.
I guess. But,
well, in that there, I guess that's a poor metaphor because there are some circumstances.
There?
Yeah.
Time? No.
But yeah, it's like I guess maybe a better example would be Sun Tzu: don't interrupt your enemy while he's making mistakes.
In the process of destroying himself, right?
Yeah.
I think it's so basic, Dan, and I feel retarded for not even knowing this stuff until about like 33, 34 years old. And what it is, I'm going to rant for just a second. It's just getting over your own selfish, idealistic bullshit that you have ingrained into your psyche from the way you were raised or religion or whatever it is that gets you to that point. You just feel like such a fool after you realize that's not what it's all about. You know what I mean? So it's and then the rest of your life is just kind of going forward from that space or that foothold and trying to help as many people as you can. You guys talk about mentor mentee a lot. I really embrace that. I like master apprentice relationships because if you know anything about me, my mom used to say I'm very black and white. I see simple solutions to complex things a lot of times, and I'm the last one that gets listened to, and it's really fucking frustrating. But you learn a lot of lessons having to wait in line, and then you have to just learn where to pick your spots. And when you do, sometimes you're successful, sometimes you go back to the end of the line. So it's not clairvoyance, it's just clarity. To kind of see what's coming down the path and prepare for it thusly.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned it's I don't know, embarrassing maybe or whatever that you didn't know this stuff until your early 30s, but what exposure do we have to any of this stuff at that before we go out and look for it ourselves? When's the first time you heard of the Stoics or Locke or Mill or Montesquieu in any meaningful way before you went out on your own and found it out? You know what I mean? The answer is none, which is why, when I say that when I say that public education, and it's not just public, by the way, but when I say public education is fucked in indoctrination centers, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I don't need my kid, and even me at the time, when I was 15, 16, 17, I did not need to know fucking calculus or trigonometry. It was completely irrelevant. I didn't need to know any of that shit. What I needed to know is how to think. Right? I needed to know about civics, which I didn't get any instruction on. I needed to know about the Constitution and the underlying ideology behind all the rights that we develop over time. Why did we choose those 10 specifically, right? Why did we cap it with one? I mean, this would have been a good thing to understand as a young man. Why is the last entry in the Bill of Rights to remind the federal government that its power ends right here, right? That would have been something nice to know. Well, it would have been nice to know that there's an intrinsic link between the First and Second Amendments, right? The reason that they're first and second is because speech and thought come first, and then the ability to defend our property, to include ourselves with any fucking might we see fit, is the thing that holds it all together, right? Any of this instruction as a teenager would have been fucking nice, but I didn't hear about any of this stuff until I went out on my own and started looking for it.
Yeah, I mean, again, just kind of simplifying, and to go on your point is, I always I try to put myself in the mindset of a 18th century colonist, and like what would piss me off if people started coming after my plantation or my property, started talking about taxing me, what was it? We fought over 3%.
Yeah, 2 to 3. It depends on which one you're talking about, but yeah, something like that.
Right. I mean, but I think there was like the anyway, I forget, but I mean, New York, Oregon, a lot of these Illinois, I think, is a really bad one. It's like 75, 80% state taxes. It's insane. I mean, imagine that. So I think about those guys' mindset, and I always think of them as kind of like pirates, to be honest. I mean, I'm a Jimmy Buffett fan. I think if you see the status quo and you just have to sort of navigate around it to get where you want to go. And I think the colonists and the what eventually became the Patriots were most concerned about was they wanted their own thing. You know what I mean? And I felt that 25 years ago, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's so.
And I feel the same. I haven't felt that feeling. I mean, it's been in perpetuity since then, but I feel that so strongly at this time in history because of, you know, what's going on geopolitically and even in our country. You know, I think our country especially, like we're the petri dish. And we kind of have been traditionally. It's like, if we want this to work, it's got to work here first.
Yeah. And the problem is that we've I guess become susceptible to the same shit that destroyed Europe, which is
100%.
Like postmodernism mostly, right? But you could also say the Enlightenment period, where to me, like, I'm not a religious person, but to me, the Enlightenment.
I respect that. I wasn't always.
Yeah. The Enlightenment period, while we made some good progress on reasoning, which I'll talk about in a moment, and logical thinking, the idea that people kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater. It's like, well, we don't need religion anymore. And maybe they're right about the religion part, but what we do need is some kind of effigy of our collective shared values, right? And it isn't going to be the Constitution. No matter how much people want to think about that, the Constitution isn't going to, like, we're not going to gather around a campfire and listen to stories about the Constitution. It's not going to happen. But stories about our ancestors and the people who have done the thing that we did back in the day, which is to say, usually it's been religion, right? It's almost always been religion, or it's been like war stories or whatever the fuck, right? But it's something like that. It's not about the principles on paper.
Military throughout history.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah. So, and it's also the biggest part of recruiting, by the way, which is why we keep having these recruiting problems, because we lose these stories. But this is the way that human beings have communicated their shared values for all of human history for like 30,000 years, right? Is by narrative, spoken word. It's why Jesus spoke in parables, because that's the way it works, right? It's the way our brains consume ideas. So in the Enlightenment period, they're like, well, I mean, the Bible's making claims, or this book's making claims that aren't necessarily reality. So why even have it? It's like, okay, well, that's a smart person doing a dumb thing, in my opinion. And then we've, I think it left us very susceptible in the 20th and 21st centuries to postmodernism, which is basically just repackaged Marxism without all the hot buzzwords. And we've gone from what the Enlightenment wanted us to do, which is deductive reasoning, into just inductive reasoning. We only do inductive reasoning now, which, for those who don't know, is where you draw general conclusions from specific examples, which is to say anecdotal or lived experience or whatever. And it's fucking stupid. It's nonsense, right? You can't, like, that's not how data and statistics work. We observe, we recognize patterns, and then we make a general idea of how the world works. That's why 0.1% of the population who want to cut their dicks off have become such a giant voice in our communities. When they, I mean, like, do what you want. I don't give a fuck.
Where the hell did that come from?
Well, I'm telling you, it's inductive reasoning, right? To continue playing this game.
The reverse of what the inverse of traditional.
Yeah. Of deductive reasoning. So to continue playing this game, for all these people that are out there whose minds are hopelessly broken, who have to live in a reality where my lived experience is everybody else's reality too, and they have to accept that means you have to accept their lived experience, right? That's the game they're playing, and it's a fucking stupid game. It's like we're all on fire and we're pretending not to be because we don't want to, admit that things haven't gone the way we want. But it's completely tits up now. The whole thing is completely tits up, and we've lost the ability to reason in any way. And to be honest, like, there's a lot of Enlightenment fans out there who are atheist people. The Enlightenment was the first stage of this. If you can call the Magna Carta and the Levelers Agreement of the People the first stages of the American Constitution and shit like that, and then, you know, French Revolution, Reformation, all this stuff, then the Enlightenment period is what set the stage for Marxism to take over in America. Now, it didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't evil. They just stopped short. They got half of the idea right and didn't realize that they were getting ready to throw a bunch of shit out that was necessary to keep us close and to keep our, I guess you could say, civilizational pride intact, which matters, right? People will fight hard for two reasons. One, because they believe in what they're doing, because their country is great. And two, because their country is secure. Nobody's going to build new buildings or save money or invest unless they know their investment is secure. That's how it works, right? That's lock and property rights. But
what was what's your Chesterton that you always say about the Roman Empire?
G.K. Chesterton, yeah, he said that men didn't love Rome because she was great. Rome was great because the men had loved her. And It is the statement holds true throughout all civilization, right? Good and bad civilizations. The reason that, in my opinion, Germany ended up failing wasn't because a bunch of powers came together and defeated them, because Germany was fucking people up, right? And with the help of Japan, they definitely could have won that war. I think it's because, in the end, the German people didn't believe in it. You know, they didn't.
Yeah.
So
and the Eastern Front that Russian winter just.
Yeah, that was a mistake. It's always a mistake.
Hey, let's just keep having wars in Eastern Ukraine, Western Russia. Let's keep doing that.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with that. And I had a thought, but I had lost it. So maybe I'll. Oh, it just says here a couple of beers.
A couple of beers is a sketch.
I love that. Dude, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I haven't watched SNL for a long time. I mean, I've seen it in clips. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. All that shit. But like. I made it a point after I saw 3 or 4 with Shane. I just like, you know what? I'm just going to start to finish. I popped on Peacock and then away we went. And honestly, it was entertaining. It was good. And then I sprinkled on top some Bill Murray with Rogan after that. And it was almost like it was back to my childhood. And that's, you know, you're same age as I am. So we had the classics. We had Rob Schneider and Phil Hartman and Sandler and Spade and Farley and all the just,
Norm Macdonald.
And we still and Eddie Murphy was still relevant, you know, and it was like we grew up in an awesome freaking time.
We were talking on the show the other day about all the movies in 94 and 95. Like those 2 years together, you'll never find 2 years where that amount of great movies came out.
I kept waiting for you guys to say Jurassic Park because I think it was 95.
I think I added Jurassic Park at the end.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. We just don't. I don't know. There's something about there's a relationship between not happiness and creativity, but I guess in the same way. So like I mentioned before, one of the extensions of property rights. From an economic standpoint is the observation that people won't invest in a community unless the community's safe, unless they know their investment's going to be safe, right? So
you don't want to just throw your money away.
Right. So like things like foreign invasion or eminent domain or high taxation or any of this stuff, they all impact creativity specifically, whether it's in architecture or entrepreneurship or actual creative stuff like writing, film, shit like that. People don't want to invest in something that's going to fucking disappear. You know what I mean? So I think there's this general malaise over society, and part of it is that shit's not gone well, and we've been at war for no reason and shit like that. But a lot of it has to do with this education class in America telling everybody that America sucks when it's the best country in the goddamn world. You know what I mean? There's a price to pay for that shit, and the price is what we're seeing right now. It's that. People don't want to if you ask 100 people, 30 or 40 of them might say, I don't know if I really want to do that. I don't want to bring kids into this fucked up world. I'm like, oh my God, dude, what are you talking about? Like, exactly how responsible are you for the things around you? And if it's 0, then you're a piece of shit. So good, don't have kids, I guess. But that's a fucking horrible nihilistic attitude.
Yeah, I mean, you know how many friends of mine I have that, and probably you too, but like they just couldn't have kids, and they're awesome people, and you know, and then eventually maybe they get lucky and they have a kid and it's awesome. And it's like, as a father of two, I know you don't have that yet, but you will. But no, as a father, it's again, I think about things differently
Yeah.
just because of that. Like, it's just dad mode. I call it dad mode. It never really shuts off. You're at the grocery store or even at a ball game or something like that, and you want to, you have the urge to parent other people's kids, and this is really a bad idea. But that's your instinct. It's like jumping into a building or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it gives you, as a man, I think it gives you something, in the same way that, having a fucking Australian Shepherd being on a farm versus being in a one-bedroom apartment or something. You know what I mean? Right. It's kind of a weird analogy, but I think it proves true when a man has some purpose greater than himself, whether it's fighting for his country or I don't know. There's a million different things you can do, right? Just doing community service, but parenthood is probably the top one. I think probably, and I haven't experienced this except for indirectly, but it seems like parenthood, even more than just being in the relationship with your wife or whatever, is probably even more of a boost in that regard.
It gives you something to live for, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like idle hands are the devil's plaything, people say. And that's certainly a true statement. And, not that you should just do things to keep yourself busy. I don't think that's a good idea. I think you should do meaningful stuff. But yeah, I completely agree with you there. I think it evolves you. Like it literally evolves you from being somebody who thinks about what they need to being somebody who provides things that others need.
Yeah, I think it's primal response. It's just primal.
That's the difference between being an adult male and being a man, in my opinion.
A dad versus a father. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's go back to the work thing. You were doing all this other stuff. What made you decide to get involved in the trades, as it were?
So funny story. I told you briefly that I supplemented my income as a karaoke DJ for about 12 to 15 years while my son was growing up. And I always had a sales job, I did merchant services. I worked at the bank. I sold gutters. I sold everything. Because it's something I can just fall out of bed and do. So I always had that as a backup. But I needed a little extra cash, and plus I needed to get the heck out and be social. So I just developed a little following because I can sing a little bit, and I'm pretty fun after a couple beers, man. And so I just kind of made that a part of my life, and I was working 5, 6, 7 days a week at certain points, but I was a young man. And so I got into the trades because one night there's a gal that kept coming in, and she would have a margarita, and she would want me to sing Linkin Park, like the one where the guy's rapping, and then it's like Amy Lee. Amy Lee, I think, is that. It's like Evanescence and Linkin Park.
Yeah.
Anyway, she'd want me to sing that with her. So I'm the DJ. I oblige. I want to try to get people up as much as you can. And just, it's like, I guess you're an airborne guy. So it's like jumping out of an airplane. It's like karaoke, really. It's really maybe a bad comparison. But once you get up there and do it, then you want to do it all the time. So that was one of my great joys doing that. Anyway, so this girl, we got to talking, and she worked at a HVAC company in Vancouver. And I was like, all right, well, what does it take to be like a service tech or something like that? She's like, all right, you got to pass this test and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So can you get me an interview? And she goes, yeah, sure. So the GM called me. I was doing landscaping at the time. They brought me in the big, like, half circle of decision maker doom. And I got the job as a junior associate. They're the biggest train dealer, like train HVAC on the West Coast. And so I got a quick education into sales, outside sales, how cutthroat it can be. And I had to basically teach myself thermodynamics in about 4 months, or I wasn't going to make it. So I ended up really liking, it's called ductless heat pumps. they're what do they call them? Split systems. It's basically like something you can mount on the wall. Then you have a cassette inside that blows air that way. It doesn't have any ducting. So I got really into that technology, sold the heck out of it because they just gave me all the leads. Hey, give him to Joe. He's not going to sell anything. Sold the crap out of those. Got elevated and just kept going and getting more and more. And then we got to the point where the owners were trying to increase productivity. So they brought in a consultant or a headhunter, and we really didn't see eye to eye from the beginning. And then so I ended up moving on, and there went my $120,000 a year job. So I just started to, at that point, I had a little bit of time to think about what my next move was wanted to be, which is so important, just to have a little bit extra set aside so you don't have to feel like you desperation all the time. You know what I mean? So after that, I worked a couple more HVAC jobs, and pretty soon it was about a 7 or 8 year career. And then had a personal tragedy happen and kind of set me back for a couple of years. And then I got into this trade, and I just really enjoy being around the shop. I like that I can say fuck. I like that there's not a whole lot of HR issues. I'm a very respectful person, but I do like to mix it up. I like jokes because it's all about just getting the job done and keeping the customer happy. And so I'm just that guy. I'm that guy. I'm VacuFlow Joe. That's what they call me.
Wait, they call you what?
VacuFlow Joe. We sell VacuFlow product. Yeah.
I see. Can you tell me, this is kind of in the weeds, but what's the difference between what you referred to as a split system and like a standard HVAC? Is it just the duct work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can add ducting to a ductless. So it's like a tankless water heater essentially,
Sure.
Except for on the HVAC side. So say you have a small structure and you don't have room, whether in a crawl space or an attic, to put ductwork. You literally just goes right through the wall, and it's connected with copper and refrigerant, and it's great. And they give all sorts of incentives up here in the Northwest.
So it's better for smaller places, but how would it operate? Like my house is 4,000 square feet. Would that be useful to me?
It all depends on the application. If they're going to be outside walls, you're going to be fine. If not, I always like a traditionally ducted system. It just makes me feel better. Plus, the air's distributed more evenly throughout the house, and you can control more things, especially in this day and age. But the ductless is nice if you have like a condo unit or, say, even a shop, or maybe you as a studio, however big that is. It's just nice for kind of open room spaces that you just can't run or hang traditional ductwork.
So if I was going to build like a gym or something,
yeah,
it'd probably be better for something like that, because it's just one big room basically.
Exactly.
I mean, right now I use my garage, which is what it is. I'm not going to condition that at all, but yeah, my plan is to build a gym sometime in the next year or two.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. So it's basically it's a heat pump, but the thing that's built into it is air conditioning. So it's nice. It's like a bonus.
How does it like price wise? Product plus installation, is it more or less expensive than ducts? I guess. I mean, it seems like
it's less expensive, and I'll tell you why. It's there's a term called gross GPMD. It's gross profit per man day. It's a labor statistic, and so basically what it is, it comes down to you can install a full ductless system in about 2 to 3 days, where it would take a traditional system upwards of 4 to 7 days. And you don't and then cost wise, you don't have to buy all the ducting and all that and all that. So
it's just copper pipes.
It's just copper. You pay for your power unit or your heat pump outside, and then whatever kind of cassette that you want inside the house. And then it's just the labor to get that. And so you can do like a single wall hanger unit in a house. It can be installed in like 3 hours.
Damn.
Single penetration. Yeah.
I mean, and that's quite a bit. So I need duct work at my place right now, and I've been putting it off because it's going to take them like at least a week to do it.
Yeah.
And which means I'm going to have to go sleep in a fucking Airbnb for a week, because it's through the main part of my house, and they'll have whatever,
You got to open everything up.
opening stuff up, and then they'll end up having to repaint the ceiling and all that. So I can't stay there. It's going to piss me off. I know I got to do it eventually. I've been kind of like,
it's the time of the season.
Yeah, well, I'm not. We'll see how it goes. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to that at all. But yeah.
Well, if you need any real world advice on, like, maybe send me an estimate or something, I can give you some pointers on what to look out for.
Yeah, for sure. I'll do that.
So you don't get hosed.
Yeah. So what are you doing now? What's what I guess is it primarily outside sales that you do?
Yep. I just got promoted to sales manager, so I actually oversee the territory managers now, which is nice. I like, it gives me a little bit more responsibility. Plus, I'm kind of the senior at this point, so it lets me kind of enact my philosophy on everything.
What do you mean by
that? Sales philosophy. I'm really good inside the house, which means that I'm to the point. I can relate to people. I listen very actively. My mom said I could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman wearing white gloves. I don't know, something like that. So it's just, for philosophy wise, I'm a big work ethic person. I'm not military, but I was raised by a senior officer. I don't know, only child. So I just it's like having an extra gear. So it's like baseball, right? Like, were you a pitcher or position player?
Both. I pitched mainly, but I played center field as well.
So my son's a college pitcher. This last couple years down in California, and I try to tell him, I'm like, you got your stock, right? You got your stock two seam or cutter or whatever it is that you throw that you can get over, no problem. And then you got your extra gear, like where whatever your out pitch is, or you need to get a little bit of extra, you leave that in the bag until you need it, right? So it's like an afterburner. So on the sales side, I try not to get the guys burnt out, but at the same time, I want them to be working and generating leads and generating business, and out there talking to builders and project managers and people really that you need to be able to communicate with. To do these things. So, in the trades, there's really only 4 or 5 trades that go into building a house, to be honest. And so you just have to be ready and available. You have to be out in the field. You have to be able to, you answer your phone when it rings. And you just have to know your schedule up and down. You gotta know where all your guys are on any given minute of any given day. Installers included, because sometimes you just have to, if the money's there, you got to grab it. So, it's a fast-paced job because I'm ADHD kid from the 90s. So I can't sit around. I always got to be doing something. And it really does feed my brain a lot. So
yeah, well, I mean, also nice. I mean, and this is I'm lucky in this regard because I had a brief period where I was working for the federal government, and that was super gay. But mostly my work throughout my adult life has been places where I can talk a lot of shit. You know what I mean? Like certainly Black Rifle is more of a corporate position, but it was Black Rifle, right? So we were still doing wild shit all the time. And I didn't really feel the effects of any kind of HR nonsense the way that you would at a normal country, you know what I mean? Or company, rather. And now what I do, I think it's just like dudes need to be around other dudes and talk about dude shit. Whether it's sports or fucking people up or dumb jokes or whatever it is, right? It doesn't really matter what it is. But you need that as part of your life. And it could be, as you get into adulthood and you got a bunch of responsibilities, it could be difficult to go find that time. And, you want to spend as much time as you can with your family. But I see it as that social element with other men is kind of, exercise to some degree. And you don't want to, in the social sense, you don't want to be a fat, out of shape dum-dum. You know what I mean? You got to stay sharp as a dude. And, and get all that shit. You don't want to be talking to your wife like she's one of your buddies. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not that you shouldn't have fun and joke around and enjoy company and all that stuff. You definitely should. But there's a joke for your wife and there's a joke for your buddies. And, be mindful of which one you're telling. And dudes need that time. I'm fortunate to, like, I sit around for a couple hours a day and talk shit with my buddies for a living, right? But
I know
it's nice, yeah. But being in the trades, or being even around the trade, even if you're not busting your knuckles on stuff, even just being involved in the trades in some way, is another way that men have an outlet for that stuff. And there's a lot of jobs, you know, like, and finance used to be like this too. It used to be all dudes. Mm-hmm. They were all a bunch of fucking lunatics doing crazy shit all the time. And I think those guys were pretty happy. I think people that work in finance now, they're either independent and they're getting that stuff on their own, or they're working in some big corporation that's talking about ESG and shit like that. And they're probably not it's probably kind of miserable, to be honest.
I mean, that shit scares the crap out of me. It's like Nazi creep. It, like, you know, that's how that stuff got started. It's just like, when you control everything and you set these strict parameters on stuff, and then it goes back to First Amendment. You can't say what you think, or else you're excoriated or even lose your job, your livelihood, all that stuff. It's almost like, it's a good thing that never happened in the United States. But it really is. It takes your sense of worth, and it takes your sense of purpose, and it takes your individualism out of it. And that's really sad. It's like, that's all you have. It's all we have.
Yeah. So, you know, we're going to wrap up. But before we do, since it is true that there's this intrinsic link between how the most productive class feels about their country and the country's success, right? Maybe you're a firebrand in marketing terms or something like that. But what is it that you love most about the country?
I still believe in the basic tenets of it, and I just like being able to wake up and be an American. It just makes me feel good, because we're the ones that are supposed to be out there in the world helping people and setting the example. And whenever I feel like I'm straying from that path a little bit, I just kind of remember what my mom taught me. You know, is that just be thankful that you get to grow up and live in the greatest country that was ever thought of, and actually materialized. And it's so precious that we almost lost it, man. I'm just going to let that sit there for a minute. I talk to my friends at length all the time about that. And I feel like there was a layer of the population that was just not going to let it go. And that's how I truly feel about it. And that's what I love about America, is I love the people, and we all come from somewhere. I mean, I'm the son of immigrants, like Mr. Obama liked to say, but not the right kind of immigrants, apparently. I'm very prideful in my family. I have great aunts, great uncles, people like that I still talk to. I'm really interested in our history, and that's what excites me for now raising my own family, is just going to be a part of it. And there's voices like you guys out there, and I'm a big fan of Rogan, and I just like people that aren't afraid to say what they really mean, even if they don't know what the consequences of that are going to be. Because America, to me, if you ask me what it really means, it's a big fucking middle finger to the rest of the world, saying we're doing it right, and if you want to be like us, you should just try to be like us. Good.
Well, thanks for coming on today. I appreciate the conversation. We're going to do more of these in the future. It's you know, I hate the idea of getting caught in a feedback loop of people who are professional thinkers instead of people who actually do shit in real life, you know. So I appreciate you coming on and discussing this from, I guess you could say, a layman's perspective.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, good.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for reaching out to me, and this has been a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you all for listening. We'll do more of these in the future. This has been Citizen.